Well, let's start with your Big 12 preview, and I think one part of our fan base is, or our listenership is going to love you. The other part, maybe not so much. So let's start with the BYU Cougars and your thoughts on their potential.
I mean, they're my pick to win the Big 12. They've been my pick to win the Big 12 all off season. And obviously, I didn't realize how against the grain that was. I did not realize how many people are just, how can you not say Texas Tech, that they're the runaway favorites? They're going to be very talented again, for sure. I'm not even necessarily worried about the fact that they lost Brendan Sorsby. I just think their defense was so dominant last year, and they lost all those guys. It's going to take a little bit of a step back. Whereas I think BYU will still be very good on defense, and they have a lot of continuity. They have a quarterback everybody feels really good about, all-America caliber running back. Like, this team, as many games as they've won the last 2 years on paper, and I realize things don't always go the way they're supposed to be on paper, this should be Kalani Sitake's best team yet.
The thing I keep hearing, Stewart, is, the depth is better than BYU's had before, really across the board. And as you watch, all you have to do is watch NFL training camp and guys falling out left and right. But depth has got to be a huge part of why you pick the teams you do as well.
Yeah, but of course that's a hard thing to know for sure, unless you can go to practice every single day. But I think in general, what we're seeing is the longer the coach has been there, the more stock they are depth-wise. A lot of the teams that are having trouble with that, new coach comes in, he's able to get a really good first string, but it takes time to build up that depth. And Kalani Sitake's been doing this for a while.
If you're not in the weeds on this sort of thing, just let us know. But there has been a little bit of controversy at BYU within the athletic department, with Kalani Sitake being pretty vocal about wanting more resources, or to simplify it a bit. And I wonder if something like that would become a distraction, or if you think it could possibly do that.
Unless I would be less concerned about that than just, I think the perception on the outside is they have a lot of money, and I think that's because of basketball, right? When people saw the level of talent they're bringing in basketball, I don't know if it's the crumble cookie guy or somebody else, but like, BYU is doing pretty darn well in NIL. And what Kalani Sitake is basically saying is, not in football. And that may surprise some people. What I would say is that in the Big 12, from the reporting I've done, from the reporting my colleagues have done over the last year or so, I mean, there's Texas Tech and there's everybody else in terms of spending. And I don't know that BYU is behind anybody else by any considerable margin. But I don't blame him for wanting to. Every coach wants more. Every coach always wants more. The costs are only going up. And in particular, obviously the portal has been very expensive for a while, but now I think the high school players are starting to demand a lot more because of rev share. Hey, we read the papers. We know you guys have $21.3 million. Like, where's ours? So I get that. Now, like I said, I don't think they're glaring. Like, I don't think they have a glaring deficiency to anybody but Texas Tech. But if it turns out like I'm totally wrong and this is not a Big 12 championship caliber team, then people will start pointing to, well, what's he supposed to do? He doesn't have the resources to build a championship roster.
Speaking of BYU, obviously the offensive line, defensive lines are solid. The depth we talked about. New defensive coordinator down there. How much impact do you think that has with Jay Hill leaving and somebody new there? Has been there obviously a while watching, but how much does that affect BYU in your mind?
You always wonder about that for sure. And when we talk about Utah, I will bring that up on the other side of the ball. But Kalani Sitake almost always has good defenses, whoever the coordinator is. There have been a couple setbacks over the years, but for the most part, that's a side of the ball you can really count on. And certainly they have a lot of experience and production coming back in terms of the personnel.
On switching to Utah now, you think Morgan Scalley might have some learning to do in year one?
Yeah, I mean, look, he's been an understudy for 20 years. He's perfectly prepared for this job, but you never fully realize till you get into that chair how many responsibilities there are that have nothing to do with football or have nothing to do with coaching your team up. And he's also not, he didn't just like inherit Kyle Whittingham's full staff. They were really struggling offense for many years, and then they got an OC they could feel really good about, and he's gone after 1 year, right? So that does give you some pause for sure.
Speaking of the offensive side, that's obviously Devin Dampier comes back, and then they've got Wayshawn Parker, who was great last year. But it's the trenches, I think, are a little bit of a mystery for Utah. Where do you feel like, for them, putting them where you kind of have them, what is it that won't gel for them?
It's a big mystery, and it's that the offensive line was central to the identity of Utah football under Kyle Whittingham. So it's kind of unfortunate timing for Morgan Scalley that the year he takes over, they're replacing all the starters or 4 of the 5 starters. And that's a tough spot to be in. They didn't have a lot of time, frankly, to compensate for that in the portal. Now, offensive line, I'm not an offensive line coach. I can't claim to know, oh yeah, well these guys behind them are just as good or better. I don't know. But I have, in the years of doing preseason prognostications, obviously quarterback is the most important, but that's often the area that, and I'll give you the example of Texas last year. My preseason number 1, everybody's preseason number 1. Well, are you concerned they lost 4 stars on the offensive line? Yeah, but it's Texas. They'll be fine. They were not fine. They were actually really bad. And so some people handle that well and some people don't.
All things considering, Arizona State fell out of nowhere to win the league 2 years ago. But how many teams would you qualify as contending in the Big 12 this year? And what are those teams? Obviously, BYU, you included.
I would say BYU, Texas Tech, Houston, and maybe Arizona. There could be a surprise, right? An ASU, a TCU. Maybe rises up. I have no idea what the ceiling is for Oklahoma State in Eric Morris's first season. I think we all think they'll be a lot better. Are they capable of winning the conference? It's hard to see that or believe that after how bad they were, but you never know. But for me personally, my cutoff is those 3, BYU, Texas Tech, Houston.
Do you feel like the idea of ranking teams without ever seeing them, would there be a benefit maybe to just letting everybody play and start rankings maybe in week 3 or something like that?
Oh, it's a bigger guess than ever with the transfer portal.
Right.
I mean, look at there were years in the peak Alabama Clemson kind of period there where 8 of my preseason top 10 would be in the top 10 at the end. And I couldn't take any credit for that. It's just the way college football was. And you look at last year, Penn State was number 1 or 2 and was terrible. Clemson was up there. They were terrible. LSU, a lot of these schools end up firing their coaches. So it just shows you how haphazard it is. But what I say to people we should eliminate the preseason polls. There shouldn't be preseason polls. Well, even if the AP and coaches poll went away tomorrow, I'm still going to do my early top 25. ESPN's going to do theirs. CBS is going to do theirs. Athlon's going to come out. Phil Steele. Whether it's official or not, you're going to know the pecking order. And also TV really, really wants a preseason poll because they want to be able to say in the promos, it's number 1 Ohio State versus number 4 Texas. So it is definitely arbitrary, but they're never going away.
I don't know about you, Stewart, but I'm glad our great senators are finally getting a vacation. But when they eventually come back, is there any hope that the Protect College Sports Act makes it over the hump?
A little bit of a hope because they have indicated that they have a vote locked in. I don't know whether to believe that, but the longer it drags out, the less chance, I think. And then I'm of the opinion that even if it does pass in the Senate, that would be obviously a significant milestone. No chance the House ends up voting on it before the midterms. It's not going to be a priority there. They're going to have their own things they want to throw into it. So it's almost symbolic whether it passes the Senate or not.
Do you like week 0? And do you feel like maybe everything could move up that early?
I think this year's week 0 is better than usual. Usually there's maybe 1 game of big interest and the rest are kind of for the diehards. But we got TCU, UNC, we've got Virginia, NC State. Memphis UNLV is appealing to me. Maybe Stanford, Hawaii. For the sake of the playoff calendar, I do think it should all move up a week because we should not be having a national championship game on January 24th. If there's a way to achieve that, compress it, move it up without moving up the regular season, fine. But I think the 12-team playoff has been great in every area except the schedule. They have got to do something about the fact that it drags into the middle of the NFL playoffs.
Logan is right up the road from where we are, so of course a lot of Aggie fans that do listen. I'm curious to your thoughts on the strength of this new Pac-12.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see that. I think Boise State is going to continue to be the model G6 program. And then you have teams like San Diego State and Fresno State that have won big at times. But overall, I don't know that it's that different than what those schools are leaving behind in the Mountain West, in part because the idea that Oregon State and Washington State were going to still be P4 level programs competing in this conference. In the 2 years since it broke up, Oregon State has just imploded. They're picked last in that conference. And Washington State, the coaches keep leaving. So I think the vision they had when they formed this conference was, first of all, they thought they were going to get some teams from the American too, and that didn't end up happening, is that this would be the clear, almost like in between the Power Four and the Group of Five. And that just did not happen. And I think it'll be kind of a toss up between them and the American as to which conference is better in a given year.
Is there a team that you mentioned BYU you're higher on than a lot, but is there another team out there that maybe you're higher on than most going into the season?
I seem to be higher in Indiana because they're my number one team and they're only number 6 in the polls, but I don't know if that's that dramatic. A couple surprise teams out there I could see. Cal in the ACC. With Tosh Lupoy coming in there and really upgrading the roster through the portal, and they have a fantastic quarterback. I could see. I don't think anybody is as on Miami's level in that conference, but they could certainly be one of the contenders. I think Wisconsin will be much better. Luke Fickell went very quickly from the hot seat to having a pretty good roster that they finally are investing some money in on that team. And then I think probably the one I'm taking the biggest flyer on is Florida, who had a losing record last year, was better than that. Like talent wise was better than that record. They just totally underachieved. They bring a lot back. And I'm a big John Summerall believer. If you can win double digits your first 4 years as a head coach at 2 different places, that's pretty telling that you know what you're doing. And Florida desperately needed somebody like him.
Man, hearing you say Cal in the ACC, that will never not be weird.
I know, it's like shocking.
No, it's not.
Who is the best league who has the best league in college football? Is it the Big Ten or is it the SEC?
I think that, you can slice that any way you want. I think the Big Ten is better at the top, and frankly, that gap is growing. And then I think the SEC is deeper. But hey, the SEC measured themselves all those years by all the national championships. That's why they were the best in their opinion. So it's the Big Ten now. And you look at the top of the polls, the fact that Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon are as high up as they are and are considered like co-favorites basically and could all win the national championship. And in the SEC, there's nobody I feel as confident in as I do those teams. I think Texas could win the national championship, but I'm not as sold on them as I am those other 3 teams. Georgia has regressed a little bit, in the last few years, still very good, obviously. So yeah, I think if you don't get a banner for being the deepest conference, you get a banner for the national championships. And the Big Ten, the scoreboard says what it says, right? 3 in a row with a great chance to make it 4.
Hear, hear. I like that. Your winning should mean something anyway when you're talking about the best. Any Heisman? Who's your Heisman favorite?
Well, whoever I would say for that is not going to win the Heisman.
That's what I'll eliminate it then.
I think Darian Mensah going to Miami and from Duke was already a very productive quarterback, and now he's going to have Malachi Toney. Cooper Barquette, who came with him from Duke, Mark Fletcher in the backfield, very manageable schedule. He has a chance to put up really big numbers in that offense. So he's my preseason pick. But if you want to sell me on CJ Carr, if you want to sell me on Dante Moore, if we all seem to recognize right now, everybody refers to Jeremiah Smith as the best player in college football, and I don't disagree. So if that's the case, then why shouldn't he win the Heisman, right? But once you get into the season and the quarterbacks are putting up big numbers, it obviously becomes a lot harder for a receiver.